This is problem number 2 on your ISN paper. The first thing you have to do is find the common denominator, preferably the least common denominator. Oh, wait, stop. I need to do this so I don't forget. Before I do that, before I start solving, I'm going to figure out what the denominator cannot be equal to, because the denominator cannot be equal to 0. So this denominator cannot be equal to 0, and this denominator can't be equal to 0, and 1 doesn't have a denominator. Add 1 to both sides. X cannot be equal to positive 1. X cannot be equal to negative 1. That's what X cannot be equal to. And so I figured that out, and I write it down at the bottom of the box where it has what X cannot be equal to. So that's what X is not equal to. What is X going to be equal to? I'm going to multiply by the least common denominator. Is that the least common denominator? And what am I going to multiply by the common denominator? Every single term. All the terms. How many terms are there? 3. So I'm going to write this down 3 times because I've got to multiply it by all of the terms. I have to multiply it by this term. Except I need to write the term down right instead of changing the problem. And I need to multiply it by this term. And also by the 1. I need to multiply the least common denominator by every single term. The reason I do that is to cancel out the denominators. This denominator cancels out with that. This denominator cancels out with that, and I don't have any more denominators. But what's left? X plus 1 times 2 is left. X minus 1 times 3 is left. And 1 times x plus 1, x minus 1. That's what's left after everything is canceled out. Now I need to distribute and FOIL and combine like terms. I need to multiply that. I need to multiply the 3. This, you need to FOIL or use a box problem to multiply that out. I need you to know that some people are making mistakes because they are writing down their work very sloppily. And if you do not put your equal signs in every single step of your problem, if you do not put your plus and minus signs in every single step of your problem, I will count it wrong on the test on Friday. You need to try to make your work a little bit neater, some of you, so you can read it. Some of you are missing it because you can't read your own handwriting. I need to combine like terms. What do I get when I combine those? I need to combine those. What do I get when I combine 2 and negative 3? and I don't have anything to combine to the x squared, what do I get when I combine those? Those zero out, and then I have a minus 1. This is called a quadratic because the x is squared. If x is squared, I need to get these terms over here with the x squared terms. So I'm going to subtract the 5x from both sides and add the 1 to both sides to zero this out. The 5's cancel and the 1's cancel. By the way, what happens to the 1's over here? They cancel. This is a binomial. It's not a trinomial. I can't multiply the first number times the last number because I don't have a last number that is a constant number. I can't factor it like these that are up on the board because it doesn't match any of those. Is there a common term between the x squared and the minus 5x? You factor out an x. And either the first term equals 0 or the second term equals 0. This is already solved. X equals 0. This have to add 5 to both sides. Now, does anything right here contradict what's over here in what x cannot equal? There's no contradictions, and so there is no extraneous answers. Extraneous is none. Please look at problem number 3. The first thing I try to do is figure out what the denominators cannot be equal to, because if I don't do it at the beginning, sometimes I forget. So the denominator cannot be equal to 1. Well, this is the same denominator, so it has the same thing. And this denominator is 6. It can't be equal to 0 because it's 6. And 6 is not equal to 0. So over here, x cannot be equal to 1. And I don't need this other part because I only have one part that says not equal to. Okay, now I need to find the common denominator. The first denominator is x minus 1. The second denominator is x minus 1, but I already have that. The last denominator is 6. That is the least common denominator. I am going to multiply every single term times this common denominator. Do not leave out the equal signs. Do not leave out the adding signs. The reason I multiply is to cancel out the denominators. And this cancels out this. And this cancels out this. And what is left? 6 times 1. And 6 times x. And x times x minus 1. And all the 1's in the denominator, but I don't need a 1 in the denominator anymore, because I canceled out all the denominators. Distribute that. X is squared, so it needs to be equal to 0 to solve it. And I stuck an x in there where it's not supposed to be. 6 times 1 is just 6. So if you had that, if you copied me down please correct that. So I need to subtract 6 from both sides of the equation so that I can zero this out. And so then I'm going to combine these like terms, and what am I going to get? That's going to make a positive 5x minus the 6 down here at the end. Okay, the factors of 6 are 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. If the factors are like this, it will add up to 5, but 2 and 3 also add up to 5. So how do I know which ones I need to use? Well, they also have to multiply to get a negative 6. Does 2 times 3 equal negative 6? So these are not the correct factors. X minus 1, x plus 6. 0 equals x minus 1, 0 equals x plus 6. You break the quadratic down into 2 linear equations. And then you subtract, nope, you add 1 to both sides. Subtract 6 from both sides. And there's your answers, except I already wrote down here x doesn't equal 1. So can it equal 1 if it doesn't equal 1? So this goes over here in the extraneous, and this is the solution.